Hey, welcome back. Hope you've had a good week. Last week we looked at what it's all about. How did we come to be here? Just by chance of a cluster of molecules coming together? Or are we evolved monkeys? Maybe there was Big Bang? Or were we created? Yvonne took us through some verses from the Bible last week that told us that we were created by God. And we find purpose and meaning in life when we follow Him. Just as the Bible tells us about what happened in the beginning with creation, it also tells us what's going to happen at the end. Now, I'm not talking about the end of our life when we die, but the end of the world as we know it. People have always been fascinated about the future and trying to predict what will happen. It could be as simple as checking out the weather forecast for the day ahead or the week ahead, to maybe looking at a horoscope for the week or month ahead of them, to where they might be this time next year or in 10 years' time. But we can never be sure of what will happen later on today, never mind next week or next year. What were you doing this time last year? Probably struggling to get up out of bed to catch the bus in the morning, or think of some excuse as to why you didn't have your homework done, or maybe dread the thought of having to go in and do PE. This time last year was pretty normal. We were able to meet our mates for coffee, go out for meals with friends and family, nip over to the Jet Centre and watch a movie, maybe go around your mate's house and hang out for a couple of hours. The first case of COVID-19 had only been reported to the World Health Organization in December 2019. And then in the middle of January 2020, the first case reported outside of China was in Thailand. This time last year, we didn't even know about human-to-human transmission and that this disease was going to cause a global health pandemic. Professor Sybil Trelawney in the Harry Potter films, who taught divination, didn't see this one coming in her crystal ball. Just as Christians believe there is a creator, God, who gives us purpose and meaning in life because the Bible tells us so, Christians also believe that the world will come to an end. Why? Because the Bible tells us so. The disciples asked Jesus about this in Matthew 24. If you get a chance, maybe have a read at it later, or you could even pause the video now and look at it. But what can we learn about when the world will end? Well, we don't need to worry about what it's going to look like, just in case we might miss it, because Jesus says in verse 30, "At that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory, and He will send His angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather His elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other." We're not going to miss when this will happen. Secondly, we can't get Sybil Trelawney to look into her crystal ball to predict when this is going to happen. Jesus says in verse 36, "No one knows about the day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." When might it be? We don't know. Only the Father in heaven knows. Finally, there's not going to be a forecast to give us a heads up and to be prepared. Jesus tells us in verse 43, "But understand this, if the owner of a house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. So you must also be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you don't expect Him." COVID-19 isn't something that anybody predicted was going to happen. We couldn't have been ready for it this time last year. Nobody had a notion about what was to come over the following 12 months. But we can be ready for the end of the world and look forward to what is to come next. In the book of Revelation, John talks about the new heaven and new earth. And Rebecca will talk a little bit more about the book of Revelation next week. But the question I leave with you this morning, or this afternoon, or this evening, depending when you're listening, is, are you ready?